And I also want to acknowledge country. And also, I know Owen was just elected formally to being Secretary of UnionsWA 2 weeks ago, so congratulations to you. Comrades, thanks for coming tonight, and I can't tell you how wonderful it is to be here and to see you all face to face and actually be able to spend some time talking to people informally and not over bloody Zoom. If I have to do more Zoom meetings, I'm going to die. It's wonderful, really, really wonderful. Thanks for letting me in. I think I just scraped through your border. I don't know if your Premier might sort of overturn that tomorrow and I might be stuck in the hotel, but so be it, you know, so be it. I also want to acknowledge the absolutely amazing victory that you had here at a state level. Everyone who watched that around Australia went, oh my God, that is like, it left us speechless. And whenever I talk to people here, it seems like you're still speechless about it. But congratulations, but it also just shows what a strong Labor government can do when they're on our side. I wanted to reflect just a little bit on last year because you know how we always write our history and we talk about all the things that unions have achieved over the years, over the last 150 years, and it goes right the way back, and we talk about the 48-hour working week, the 40-hour week, the 38-hour week, talk about super, about Medicare, workers' compensation, paid maternity leave, on and on and on, this list of achievements. I think that we wrote a new chapter last year. You all wrote a new chapter last year. And there's some things we can forget because so much happened last year. And the first is remember it was around this time last year, probably a bit earlier, around February and March. There was a huge struggle happening in our country, as there was all around the world, around whether we would go with herd immunity or whether we would put people's lives first. And really, actually, that was also about whether the profits of business was going to come first or people's lives go first. And did you ever think that we'd be having that type of fight? And that's exactly what we were having. Don't forget, we were this close for it going the wrong way. Because I can tell you Scott Morrison and the federal Liberals were absolutely for, as Scott Morrison said, learning to live with the virus, letting the virus run free, all of these things. We were so close to that happening. And it was only because not just us, the trade union movement, but a whole lot of state premiers fought back about that. A whole lot of doctors, medical experts all stood up and said no. But for us as trade unionists, there's not one thought in our mind for half a millisecond that we would need to even contemplate this. It's no question that lives and human beings come first. I mean, that is our values, and anyone else and actually it's the country's values, and we've clearly seen that, and good decisions were made. But they weren't made by accident, and we shouldn't forget that we were part of that tide that pushed back those arguments. And remember at the beginning of the pandemic when all of a sudden, there was shutdowns and there was worry about, people going and get testing and trying to get people to get tested. And it was us who then had to start the fight for paid pandemic leave to allow people who didn't have sick leave, who had no paid leave at all, to be able to take time off if they were sick. Because 1 in 3 workers have no sick leave. What were they doing? They were going to work when they were sick. And it was only us, the trade union movement, that were out there fighting for that. And we fought and we fought and we fought. And eventually we won. Eventually. It took about 6 months. It should have happened straight away. But we didn't just give up when the federal government or state government said, oh no, we're not doing that, it's not an issue. We kept going and we kept fighting. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, the really big thing is that we should never forget that JobKeeper was there because of the trade union movement, because we came up with the idea, we pushed for the idea. Scott Morrison ruled it out. He ruled it out, said we won't be doing that. We will not be doing that in this country. Did we walk away and say, oh, well, we tried? didn't happen. No, we didn't. We kept fighting. We kept fighting, and a week later, they announced JobKeeper, and they had to come back onto the side of what we are arguing for. If it wasn't for us, the trade union movement, there would have been so many more unemployed people, so many more people suffering in 2020. And so, you know, when you go to your local, businesses and your small businesses, or that you're having, Christmas time, and you have, that difficult uncle that says, "Oh, was a trade union movement ever done, recently?" You can say, every single one of you, JobKeeper, that's 3.6 million livelihoods that were saved because we had the guts to stand up and argue for it. So that's to all of you, and you should be very proud of that. And I just think back of last year, and you think, well, where would their country have been if it were not for unions? If it were not for all of the health and safety reps fighting for safe workplaces in their workplaces? Do you know who I think should be, the hero of the pandemic? I'll not say Australian of the Year because the current one's pretty good, but maybe next year the Australian of the Year. It's this guy called Diego. He's a cleaner at Qantas, and maybe some of you may remember this, but in February there were still planes coming from China, and they were full of COVID. Of course they were. And he was a delegate out of the Qantas cleaning crew, and they had no PPE, like none. And Qantas was saying, "Oh no, we deem it safe, off you go and clean that plane." He refused, and he got his workers together, their shift together, and they said, "We won't clean this plane unless we've got proper PPE, unless it's safe." What did Qantas do? They stood him down. They stood him down, and then what happened? The airline the government stopped all flights from China. Then he got stood down entirely, and then in the end, Alan Joyce outsourced his job altogether. But you think, what could have happened if Diego didn't stand up and say he wasn't cleaning that plane? Think of COVID that would have got out into one of our biggest cities. If he hadn't have done that, I'll tell you what, he's a real hero. He's an absolute real hero and really needs to be recognised alongside all our aged care workers, our disability workers, all our healthcare workers, all our teachers that had to go and still teach when so much was unknown. So I just think that when we reflect on last year, why did that happen? Why were we all able to do that? It was because of our strong values. And, we get courage out of strength in numbers, out of knowing that we'll back each other up, out of knowing that we won't be alone. Diego wasn't alone. He had everyone else, plus he had his union, plus he had everyone else. That is why we have the courage to do things, because we believe in our values of putting human lives first, obviously, but about the importance of us before profits, of humans first of all, and that's unshakable. So when everything else was so uncertain and people didn't know what to do, when people were afraid, our anchor was strong because of our strong values and our beliefs and our courage. And so that is something that we should always remember out of last year. The other thing that happened last year is that we really moved forward in terms of being able to talk to the Australian population and the politicians, the political class around the issue of insecure work. Now, of course, us as a trade union movement, we've been talking about this for a long time, haven't we? But last year, the dial really moved forward, and it happened, of course, because of all those workers that didn't have sick leave. It happened because 1 million casuals were left out of JobKeeper, just got nothing whatsoever. It happened for all those reasons, and now we've got the vaccine program, and people are in insecure work are worried about getting the vaccine because they're going to have to take days off work, and if they take days off work, they don't get paid, so we've still got that same problem. So out of last year, we've moved the dial, and we've moved the dial on this issue. Our job now is to keep going, because we deserve so much better in our country than having our young people, it's not even young people, so many people stuck in insecure work, so many people not having the same rights as other workers, not knowing how much money they're going to have each week, not being able to plan a life, not being able to get a mortgage, not being able to do all those things. We can turn that around. We can turn that around by organising in our workplace, but also governments need to change the laws. They absolutely need to do that so that Australians have more secure jobs, more reliable jobs. You know, when you're talking to those local people in your shops, when there's more reliable jobs, there's more reliable income for those local businesses. People with insecure jobs are going to spend less money in their local businesses buying coffees or going to restaurants if they could ever afford it, or extra money elsewhere. They won't do it unless they have secure jobs. So it's not just about the individual, which we all care about because of who we are, and about that justice. It's about being good for communities and good for the economy. This needs to be the theme of our campaign going towards the federal election. If we've moved things, we've got to keep moving it further. We've got to make this a political issue, because in the end, the solution actually lies with politicians. We've got to push them to make the change, just like we always have. We've got to really rely on you here in WA, really rely on you, well, because you're just so brilliant in terms of what you've done recently, but the seats of Swan, you know, Hasluck, Pearce, really key ones. And I hope that I can rely on everyone here to be out there being the Union Army, the people that bring about real change in the world. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here, and I really look forward to having chats with all of you.